Hello everyone! Having a blank slate? If not, then buckle up because I'm going to sprinkle some fun in. I am Navriti, one of your navigators through the sea of excitement and resources. Wait. I cannot begin without seeing some smiles. So you all better cheer up and show me some smiles. That's the spirit. A line of inquiry, which is as ancient as it is modern, is recounting who you are with the demands of a role, especially when they contradict each other. I am quoting the speaker who I'm here to invite. He, in my opinion, is a wizard of wisdom who has the ability to answer two difficult questions pertaining to mindfulness. What am I experiencing? And who is experiencing the I in me? He literally is the walking testament for servant innovation and the pursuit of excellence. Well, he has come all the way from London, so don't mind if it's still jet lagged. Alright. Well, before you all beat me up for playing the suspense game too long, I'll just disclose our next speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together as I welcome the man of the hour, Mr. Aditya Maheswaran. Let's give him a round of applause that resonates with admiration and appreciation for all that he is.
Hello, thank you for that lovely introduction. It's great to be here. The only truth I can definitely vouch for in that introduction is that I'm jet lagged. The rest, yeah. Talking about jet lag, I had a very interesting morning today. It was 3 in the morning and I found myself in a lonely dhaba somewhere between Delhi and Ludhiana. It was just me and Mr. Rajkumar, who works for KVM. And he was telling me about the history and heritage of this beautiful school. And he's a person who has worked here as a clerk in accounting, if I'm right, for 43 years. He's worked here longer than I've been alive, and I'm sure many of you have been alive. And in his words, I could see passion about what the school means to him and what it has meant for generations of youth who have graduated from here. I almost went into reminiscing that the entire human civilization is like a relay race. Each generation takes the baton from the previous generation, has their time in the limelight, and when the time comes, needs to pass the baton to the next generation. But the real question is, when we receive the baton from the previous generation, to the time that we are unleashing our potential in the world and passing the baton to the next generation, are we making the world a better place and passing it on? A worse place? A happier place or a more unhappy place? A safer place or an unsafe place to the next generation? And soon the baton will be passed to you, the students of 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, soon that responsibility will come to you. And with the baton in your hands, you will have a choice to make. How would you want to show up to this world? And when your time comes, what kind of world would you want to pass on to the generation that comes after you? I know for a fact that each person has unlimited potential. Talking of potential, I was born in a small town called Trichy in the south of India. When I was young, we used to have a garden behind our house. And my mom had this habit of planting seeds and waiting for it to become a plant and sometimes even a big tree. One day when I was around 6 years old, I came back from school and I searched for my mom and she was in the garden. So I went to her and said, "Mom, today the teacher asked me a question for which I didn't have an answer to." She said, "What was the question?" I said, "The teacher asked me, what will you be when you grow up?" My mom smiled. She had a few seeds in her hand. She was in the garden. And she looked at me and asked me a question, "Aditya, what do you think these seeds will be when they grow up?" I said, of course, Mom, they will be big, beautiful trees. She said, Aditya, you're right and you're wrong. Moms have these weird ways of answering these questions. How can I be right and wrong, Mom? Am I right or am I wrong? She said, you're right in that all of these seeds in my hand have in it the potential to be big, beautiful trees. But most seeds don't become big, beautiful trees. She said, in fact, not only do each of these seeds have the potential, each of these seeds have a unique potential because this seed can become a beautiful apple tree, and this seed can become a beautiful mango tree, and this seed can become a beautiful lemon tree. But Aditya, that potential alone is not enough. What it needs is protection, nurturing. What it needs is an environment to facilitate its growth. That's why, Aditya, we put water, we have the right soil, it needs the right sunlight. Aditya, you have the potential as well, a unique God-given gift that each person has, just like those seeds. The question is, are you going to protect it, nurture it, and so that hidden potential, which is invisible in the seed, just like in you, can unleash itself in this world to create a positive impact. So that when your turn comes to pass the baton, you can proudly say you've made the world a better place and then passed it on. As I grew up, the wisdom in my mom's words came true when I saw people around me and my own journey in this world. When I graduated from school and college in my mid-20s, I knew all of my friends had the potential to become superstars in sports, academics, to make the world a better place. But something happens by mid-20s. For those of you who crossed mid-20s here, you would know. Suddenly life gets boring. We get unhappy, frustrated with work, frustrated with relationships, and all that potential and dream and passion that you had when you were young suddenly becomes, and the only goal becomes, as they say, the 1, 2, 3, 4 life. Do any of you know what 1, 2, 3, 4 life is? One spouse, 2 kids, 3-bedroom house, 4-wheeler. The highest goal in our lives. One spouse, 2 kids, 3-bedroom, 4-wheeler. Life is made. What happened to that seed which had the potential to do much more to leave the world better than we found it as it was handed over to us? So I started looking at people who actually unleashed their potential, created a positive impact in the society. I wanted to learn from them because I thought I was caught into that redundant, boring world myself. I was afraid that I may get caught up there. I wanted to unleash that potential which my mom promised that I had. So, I started noticing that successful people, what traits do they have? How do they go beyond just themselves, them, family and money, and do something that impacts the world positively? And in studying them for many years, I realized they all have some common traits, which is useful for me to imbibe and all of us maybe to imbibe. I'm going to talk about 4 of them. The first is purpose. They have a purpose that is bigger than themselves and bigger than just their jobs. Let me give you an example. Let's take 2 software engineers. Both of them, the what is the same. They both are software engineers. They're all equally qualified. Suppose I ask the first software engineer the question, what is the purpose of you being a software engineer? And say he says, the purpose is, to make money, to buy another house, to settle my EMI, to have a good vacation. And I ask the second software engineer the same question, what is the purpose of you being a software engineer? And this fellow says, Aditya, to use the power of technology to save people's lives, to use the power of technology to solve the problem of inequity in this world, to use the power of technology to cure diseases that are yet to be cured. Now the what of what they do is exactly the same. The why behind that what is what we call purpose. In the first example, the purpose was the job. In the second example, the purpose was bigger than him and bigger than the job. Now let's see what happens to these 2 people. This person once, after 2 years in the job, starts waiting for that Friday to happen and hates the Monday. True for every job, all of us, right? Waits for that vacation. It's almost that he's working just to get out of work. Work feels like work. When work feels like work, it's not fun. When work doesn't feel like work, it feels like, is somebody paying me to do this? I would anyway do this because I love it. Now that's passion. But that requires us to anchor on a purpose that's bigger than us. If the purpose is just selfish, soon life takes over. And we all go back to complaining about life, being frustrated. No work is good work. But if you have a purpose that's bigger than yourself and your job, it never feels like you work a single day of your life. And then that seed has that nutrition to unleash itself. Let's take an example of two teachers. Say teacher one says, the purpose behind being a teacher is, I have time and, I like kids, I'm just becoming a teacher because I'm qualified. The second teacher says, the purpose behind me being a teacher is to create a generation of students who can make our country really great. Now, how will these two teachers show up in a classroom? Will there be a difference? The job is the same, but the why that sits behind the what makes a huge difference in the potential being unleashed to the best of its possibility in whatever profession. I was very inspired by a story I read about, maybe a fictitious story, maybe it really happened. You can never trust sources, isn't it? Misinformation, disinformation. But it seems in the 1960s, when the space program was gaining so much popularity during the Cold War period, astronauts, cosmonauts, it seems John F. Kennedy, President John F. Kennedy in the US visited NASA to see what NASA is up to. As he was walking in the corridors of NASA, suddenly he met a janitor. You all know what a janitor does? Yeah? He was just cleaning equipment, doing what a janitor is supposed to do. But there was something about this janitor that caught his eye. He seemed to be excellent at what he was doing. He was so passionate, as if he was taking care of his own belongings. So the President John F. Kennedy stopped and asked the janitor, "Hey janitor, what is your job at NASA?" The janitor said, "Sir, my job is to send human beings to moon safely." John F. Kennedy said, "Come on, your job is being a janitor?" He said, "Sir, my job is being a janitor. But the purpose, the role that I see myself play is putting people to moon safely. I'll tell you how, sir. If I don't keep the equipments clean, there is greater chance of vulnerability. If there is greater chance of vulnerability, there is greater chance of launches going bad. There's greatest chance of launches going bad, there's greater chance of human life lost and billions of dollars at stake. So my job is determined by my background, by my qualification, by my economic background. It's luck. I cannot change my parents. I cannot change what I'm qualified at. But the purpose I see behind my job is determined only by me, sir. And I can choose to be a janitor and still say my purpose is to put people on moon safely. Thank you." And John F. Kennedy was amazed. And every successful person who transforms the seed of potential, the hidden potential, into unleashed potential, has a purpose that's bigger than themselves or their jobs. This is universally true. The second characteristic. Successful people often seem to be clear in choices they make. Most people are confused making choices, isn't it? It's almost like Alice in Wonderland. Have any of you read Alice in Wonderland? What happens when Alice gets into Wonderland? She keeps walking on the road, but what happens? Suddenly there's a fork. The road goes in two paths. Now she doesn't know whether to go left or right. So she sees a cat sitting on top of a tree. She asks, "Cat, which way do I go, left or right?" The cat asks Alice a question. "Alice, that depends on where you want to go." Alice says, "Cat, actually, I don't know where I want to go. the cat says Alice, then it doesn't matter which road you take. That's how choices are in life. The good versus good choice, bad versus bad choice, and we're confused. Should I go play or should I study? Oh, should I watch one more video on YouTube or should I not? Or should I do this subject or that subject? Choices are difficult, and somehow people who are focused with purpose seem to be much clearer about decision making than other people. You see, when you are anchored on purpose, you're laser focused on not just what to do, but also what not to do. Let me give you an example. A few weeks ago in London, where I lived, I happened to be in an event in a lovely school like this in London called the Harrow School. It's a very famous school. Some of our ex-prime ministers have been students there as well. I was there for an event, and by chance I was walking through the school, and I saw a student in the gymnastics place practicing gymnastics, and it was a Sunday morning. He didn't need to be there. After the event, I walked back in the same corridor, and he was still practicing, this poor 12-year-old. And all the other kids were eating ice cream, playing around. And so I went inside the gymnastics room, and I asked him, hey, listen, I'm happy for you, but don't you want to be like the other kids, play around, have those ice creams? It's a Sunday morning, for God's sakes. Why are you so intensely practicing? He said, sir, if I do what the other kids do, I can't represent my country in the 2028 Olympics. If I have freedom in doing whatever I want, I'm constraining freedom in becoming whoever I want to become. But if I want freedom in choosing who I want to become, my freedom in what I want to do is severely constrained. I was like, he just explained the law of karma better than anybody I've ever heard. You see, friends, actions and consequences are not two separate things. If you want freedom in action, I will do whatever my mind says. That immediately constrains freedom of consequences. But if you want freedom of consequence, I want to be a happy person, I want to be a successful person, then that automatically constrains what you can or cannot do today. You can't have freedom on both ends. You have to choose which side you want freedom on. And successful people are able to exercise their intellect to know that freedom is better chosen in the side of consequence. I want to be a CEO, but I want to do whatever I want to do. It doesn't work. Freedom exists on one side. And the moment you choose a side, the other side is locked, and you've got to do what you've got to do to get to the destination. Successful people are able to make choices better because they have a purpose in the side of consequence. So the side of actions are being focused. So they get distracted lesser, they waste time lesser. And that's the audit we all can do to unleash our own potential. The third trait that I observe in successful people is the ability to take risks and keep experimenting without thinking of it as success or failure. They think of both success and failure as a learning experience. And the moment you engage in any activity as a learning experience, you cannot succeed or fail. You've just learned. In my own life, I remember, when I was in school, I was a really timid, shy, reserved, introverted speaker. I would be really afraid to get on stage and give a speech. So when I finished school, when I was 18 or so, my father said, listen, Aditya, you're just wasting time playing cricket every Sunday. I'm going to take you to a public speaking class. It was called a Toastmasters Club, if any of you have heard of it. He dragged me to a Toastmasters meeting, and I didn't even know what it was. And I was sitting there were a group of 20 people, and there's a lady on stage who got on stage and said, I'm going to just pull up anybody on stage, give them a topic, and you've got to speak for 2 minutes. I looked at my dad and said, you never prepared me for this. I thought I'm going to watch somebody else speak. And correctly, Murphy's Law, she looked at the audience and her eyes fell on me. Said, young man, come on stage. I got on stage and she said, speak for 2 minutes on the topic globalization. I'm not making it up. Now, it's not too difficult a topic, right? You can talk about it for 2 minutes. But it's very difficult if you're shy, introverted, timid in front of people who you have never met. And I was on stage saying, globe. One gentleman thought I wanted gulab jamun or something. Globe. And that day I swore two things. Never listen to what your dad says. And number two, never return to a Toastmasters meeting. But as I was getting out of the room that evening, embarrassed, dejected, depressed, at least I would have played cricket. Even if I had got duck out, it's fine. There was an elderly gentleman who said, Aditya, why are you so angry about yourself? I failed, I was embarrassed. No, you just took a risk and you've learned from the process. Now, what can be worse than this? Come back next time, you'll be better. As a young, naive guy, I listened to him, I came back next time, I was worse. But the same gentleman said, come back next time, come back next time. I came 6 times again, and 6 times bombs, and the 7th time I delivered a 2-minute speech, and I felt on top of the world. Friends, fast forward 8 years from then, I was standing at the finals of the World Championship of Public Speaking in Las Vegas in 2015. And I ended up becoming the first Indian representing India to be in the top 3 speakers in the world. Now, that's not just for applause. That's to tell you that nothing is possible without incremental risks. Life is a series of experiments, is what successful people think. When life is a series of experiments, there is no worry about success and failure because everything is a learning experience. Like Edison said, it took me 1,000 attempts to create the bulb, but it's not failure. If I found out 999 ways it doesn't work. I want to end with the last trait of successful people, which is resilience. You know, all of us are going to be hit by setbacks in our life. A bad breakup, getting fired. I've had all of that in my life as well. But if you look at why everybody suffers, and you will suffer too in your life, suffering is inevitable, like the Buddha said. You will suffer too. But if you take an audit of what makes everybody suffer, almost 90% of it is similar to everybody. But those things are not new in your life. And that's where I go back to the Buddha. He talked about the story of the 2 arrows, and I'll conclude with this. He said there are 2 arrows always punching in our chest. The first arrow is the objective arrow. Yes, there is a calamity. Yes, there is COVID-19. Yes, there is a bad breakup. Yes, a loved one died. These are true objective suffering, right? It's painful. But he said there is a second arrow, which is the subjective arrow, which is your interpretation of the first arrow, which is the real cause of suffering. Highly resilient people also have the first arrow punched at them. Like anybody else, the law of probability says we all will suffer equally. But the second arrow is something we choose to punch into ourselves. Resilience only means that we will be objective and calm and build our own intellect to ensure that we're able to differentiate between the first and second arrow. And successful people are always more resilient because they don't bear the brunt of the second arrow, which is a self-caused suffering unto themselves. So, to recap, friends, we all are like those seeds, like my mom said. What will you be when you grow up? Not all seeds become trees, but in all seeds lies the inherent potential to become beautiful trees, just like all of us. Anchor yourself to a purpose. Let that be bigger than you or your job. Make choices that help you on the side of consequence, who you want to become, not freedom of what I want to do now. Sometimes you've got to sacrifice the short term for the long term. Build resilience. Friends, as I started by saying, we all inherit a baton and pass on the baton to the next generation. The question is, are we making the world a better place as we pass it on? It was a pleasure speaking to all of you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Aditya.